once again to EWTN's Bookmark. I'm Doug Keck, your host. Our guest is Sean Carney. The book, To the Heart of the Matter, the 40-Day Companion to Live a Culture of Life, published by Capella Books, available through our EWTN Religious Catalog. Great to see you, Sean.
Great to be back. Thanks, Doug.
Now, besides writing books having to do with 40 Days for Life, you have some other greater involvement than that, right?
Right, yes.
Right.
Well, I have 8 kids, so I'm definitely involved in the pro-life movement in that realm. But I get to serve as the president of 40 Days for Life, and so there's never a dull moment. And this book in particular couldn't have been written at a worse time because I was so busy with work and with 40 Days for Life. But I had been thinking about it for years, and I knocked it out last summer.
Now, why do you call it a companion to live a culture of life?
Because we're so busy. I think we all want help, no matter what we're doing. If you're taking care of your elderly parents, if you're retired and you have a million grandkids that you don't get to see as much as you want to, if you're like me and you're raising kids, we all want more time. And this is a companion to help you use that time to build a culture of life every day.
Now, you dedicated this: "For my children, words cannot express the joy and motivation you give your mother and me to live a culture of life every day." How do they do that?
By getting up in the morning and needing us. I think there's no greater calling than being, obviously, a priest who gets to distribute the sacraments, but raising the future of the church, the domestic church. Our Lord came in through a family. And so that can never get overlooked, no matter what kind of work you're doing. It has to be done ultimately to hand on to a future generation, and your own children especially, if you have them.
Right. Did you at one time think you had a vocation to the priesthood?
I did. I was obsessed with the priesthood. I wanted to be a priest. I was the opposite of most kids in middle school and high school, where I never considered marriage. And so, I only wanted to be a priest. And thank God my spiritual directors pointed that out to me. They said, you haven't even considered a marriage. And I dated, and I went to the prom, and I did all those things, and all my friends had girlfriends. But I just thought, because of the great example of priests I was fortunate enough to be around, I just thought, well, that's what I want to do. And when I really discerned, I realized that's not what I was called to.
Right.
But I definitely, for my Catholic formation, I wouldn't be here in the pro-life movement without
one of the
priests.
things that struck me with you're just talking about that, and I was thinking a term about burnout, and some of what you're talking about here in the book is also the idea, and as in the forward here, it's mentioned that the idea that you can no longer just be an activist activity, pro-life work, but the whole idea you talk about here is being aware of burnout as well, right?
Absolutely. And I was intentional in that I wanted Mother Agnes, the Mother Superior, Sisters of Life, to write the foreword, and she wrote a great foreword. I hope it's not better than the book, but it may be. But that's the nature of our existence. We have to put the contemplative before the active. And when you're in the pro-life movement, when you're part of 40 Days for Life or anything else in our culture, there's activism, and there needs to be. That, thank God we live in a country we can do that. But that cannot overwhelm, and it will try, it cannot overwhelm the contemplative and our prayer life and our vocation and the fact that this is part of our journey to go home to heaven. And it can't dominate because you'll not only get burned out, I think you'll ruin your family, you'll ruin other aspects of your life.
So you've been doing this for a number of years. Have you seen that yourself in other people you've worked with over the years?
20 years is now my little mark of being a volunteer and then getting to work in the pro-life movement. The answer is yes. I've definitely seen it happen to other people. I've certainly seen myself tempted to do it. This is not, I'm writing this book to myself. And that's important because, and I mentioned in there, St. Jose Maria says a saint is one who struggles. And sometimes, we get frustrated because we struggle, but sometimes people aren't struggling, but they need to be. They just say, well, I can do this because it's for a great cause. I can dive into this apostolate because it's so awesome. And you could do that with anything. You can do it with EWTN, you can do it with 40 Days for Life, and that would just dominate, and you would get burnt out at best.
Now, did you ever drink Ripple?
No, but it's a great line from Forrest Gump. And I don't know why. I was waiting for the editor to say, this is ridiculous. We're not having the book open like this. But she didn't say that.
No, okay. As we arrive for heaven with simplicity and focus, we often reminded the world prefers a bottle of Ripple. So let me ask you that. In a sense, you're
Which
saying...
is from Forrest Gump.
Yeah, right. Saying that, in a sense, you need to be involved, you need to be an activist, but there needs to be a balance there.
There has to be a balance. And our world in that scene, I also wanted to highlight how superficial our culture is. That we can live for greatness, that Christ and the church calls us to live for greatness, not in these high peak moments when, you know, everybody's telling us how great we are, but in our daily lives and in the little things that we do. And the world says, I don't want to be a saint, I just want to hang out.
Right.
And that's not what we're called to.
Right. You say it's not hyperbolic to say that abortion is not only the defining moral issue of our time, but it is the defining moral issue of all time. But then you go on to say, I'm not a nut who runs around my dry cleaner or grocery store yelling at innocent bystanders about the injustice of abortion. Do you know people who do that?
Yes, I've met many of them, and they have good intentions. But this can't dominate every single minute of our life. And there's an abortion every 28 seconds in the United States of America. And we have to act. One of the reasons I wrote this book is because so many people say, you know, I want to do more in the pro-life movement. I don't feel like I do enough. And a lot of times I say, you're right. You don't do enough.
Right.
You know, as an Irish priest once told me, there's no such thing as Catholic guilt. There's just guilt. And so, you know, some people aren't doing enough because they're not doing anything. But it also doesn't mean that we allow whatever injustice it is to define our relationship with Christ and to define the relationship with our family. And it has to be part of that. And that's one of the beautiful things about 40 Days for Life is hopefully we've done our best to make going out and peacefully praying in front of an abortion facility part of your spiritual life. Just another thing that you do once a week and as part of your relationship with God.
Well, you talk about the answer lying with the quote from Mother Teresa about do small things with great love, and you say, talking about dealing with people who have abortions, you say the common theme you've always heard is pain.
Yeah, nobody grows up wanting an abortion. And for us, and I've seen it personally, and we see it from the global aspect of 40 Days for Life, we're the only ones that want to be there. The doctors don't want to be there. The nurses don't want to be there. Nobody grows up wanting to work in the abortion industry, and the women don't want to be there. Broken homes are the breeding grounds for the abortion industry. And that was a big motivation for me to write this book, that the assault on the family and abortion being this overwhelming 56 million a year around the world, these aren't two separate issues. And they're connected. And I think it's the role of Christians, certainly of Catholics, to nurture a culture of life in our homes, the domestic church, but in our daily lives, in everything that we do. And we probably can't do that if we're yelling at the dry cleaner about abortion.
You say if our lives, jobs, duties, and routines are not done with great love, we're really not pro-life because we're really not living an interior life. We're only activists trying to make it through the day alone, not realizing God is with us, for us, and in us.
Yeah, that's the great fear of being on our deathbed and realizing, oh my word, I did this all for myself. I have no real relationship with God. And I had the privilege of going on a wonderful retreat with Father Benedict Groeschel when I was in college.
Right.
And this was, this is like the basic, this is sort of the opening theme of the retreat. And it was beautiful. And he talked about himself and how fearful he was that, you know, he wanted to go back and do certain things in his life, all for God, because he had held back. And you're sitting here looking at a saint essentially go, what are you talking about?
Absolutely.
And so then you look at yourself and you go, I'm in major trouble. So, you know, I think we always have to have this at the front of our mind. The saints always meditated on their intentions and the reality that they would die one day.
Right. You talk about in a section, Don't Be a Wimp. The pro-life movement is unique in that it demands a sense of relentless urgency. So with that being the case, how does anyone deal with that?
I think it's the balance. That's why the first chapter is Don't Be a Wuss. So many people use excuses to cover up fear of not defending the unborn. And no matter what fear we have, we're not as scared as the woman driving in that day for her abortion appointment. You know, we need to, and I have 2 chapters on fear, we need to have the right kind of fear. But this walk on eggshell, I don't want to disrupt, you know, somebody may be uncomfortable with this. There's no time for that in the United States of America. I think we enter into a fantasy world.
Is it harder today in some ways because that whole idea of tolerance and the whole idea of other people's feelings has gotten so high up? You would think it would really impact people's standing up for pro-life and dealing with it, as you say, in incredibly a polarizing issue.
Not if we charitably ignore it. You know, the walk on eggshell, I'm really offended by what you're saying. If we simply and charitably ignore that, not rudely, but if we ignore that and speak to truth and trust truth and do so in love, people see that. We've helped 196 abortion workers, you know, who had a change of heart and left their job. And, you know, none of them started off by saying, you guys were just the nicest people in the world and we always got along and I had to join your side. Right. You know, that never happened. They always started with, you know, get out of here. Yeah, right. Who are you? So I think it takes time. We have to trust the timing of the Holy Spirit, but we can't compromise our faith or truth to try to, because then you're doing it for yourself. You feel better. They don't feel better.
Right, right. And a lot of people are afraid to be embarrassed or feel ostracized. Like you said, you can help special needs kids. It's a little different than getting out there in front of an abortion clinic. You're not going to get the same kind of overwhelming support that everybody says, isn't that great that
everybody
you're doing
wants a clean earth. Right. Nobody wants to see starving children in Africa. Right. You know, yes, we need to better our schools. I did an interview when Alabama banned abortion. It was NBC, and they said, yeah, but Alabama has the worst public schools and this and that. Y'all are focused on abortion, and you're not focused on improving the schools and all this. And, you know, it's just like the list of human frailties and problems in the United States is endless.
Right.
That doesn't mean we start annihilating our population because we don't want them to suffer.
Well, maybe I think if we have fewer kids, we can make the class sizes smaller. That might be one way for them to promote abortion. Now, let me ask you about this. You ask other people, what's your spilled milk?
Yeah. So I have a chapter in there called Spilled Milk. It's just one of my personal nuisances. I hate dairy on the floor or on the table, and I have 8 children.
You grew up on a farm or
something?
No,
I don't know what it is. It's a person. It's my problem, right?
Okay.
But as I've discovered the problem, and the problem is me. But I have 8 kids. They're always spilling milk. There's just liquid everywhere, always needing to be cleaned up, and it just drives me nuts. And some people have other things, and that will drive you nuts. It'll change your mood, whatever your thing is, and it's just our getting over ourselves and switching that and offering it up for God.
You say in a section called No Making Sense of It that the devil is never satisfied, not even with abortion.
No, and he wants us to celebrate it. He doesn't even want us to just to tolerate it. He wants us to celebrate it, to expand it, and this isn't just Sean Carney saying dramatic statements. It is what we see in our country. We have had people in very nice suits that are supposedly well-educated who are governors smile and clap and say this is great to end the life of a child who's in the birth canal. Right. And so there is no you have your view and I have mine, and isn't it great we live in this country and can talk about it. Those people need to be shunned. That's an absolutely outrageous, barbaric sentiment towards children. And I think those are the reminders that this is a spiritual battle in the end. And we have atheists for life, we have agnostics for life, you have everybody for life. You have, you know, barbecue lovers for life. And they're all great, and they all are united on this issue, and the pro-life movement's so big. But this is ultimately a religious movement. It is a spiritual dryness that we are trying to pour water over.
Right. You make the point that there is no home in the parking lots of abortion facilities. What does that mean?
No one wants to be there. No one grew up. No one was loved into abortion. Okay. Think of all the other surgeries that we have they're all good. It's not controversial to get your a knee replaced or have your wisdom teeth taken out. But this is one of the most common surgeries in our land. And when you watch people in the parking lot of an abortion facility, they all have the same look of how in the world did I get to this day?
Right.
And it's a hard road. And it most of the time started at home.
Now, in the section Boys Will Be Boys, you say the world does not emasculate men. We do it to ourselves by the standard we set for ourselves. How so?
Absolutely. I think there's this, men have it hard and they've been shoved to the sidelines. Well, no, they haven't. They've sprinted to the sidelines. They've sort of said, hey, you know, abortion's here and who am I to say anything? And
right, takes men off the hook.
It's a woman's issue. No one benefits from abortion more than bad men. Promiscuous men who want no responsibilities. They are the real winners. And I've told reporters, and they just sometimes they're like, I don't believe you. But I said it was 9 men on the Supreme Court who gave our country abortion. This is men not living up to their role as protectors of their girlfriends, wives, or children, but also, and worse, not wanting to often.
Right. You talk about chapter day 6. You kind of go through this, obviously, day by day through 40 days. And you also have, at the end of each chapter, some scripture and also a daily intention, just to give people an idea of the format of the book. You say there are 3 good reasons for not going out to peacefully pray at an abortion. Here they are. You physically can't go. You have anger issues, so stay home. You do not have the emotional capacity to go due to a past abortion experience. You're saying outside of those, you need to be there. And one of the things you point out is why it's so important for the pro-life presence to be there, right?
Yeah, it is the power of presence. Thomas Aquinas said the essence of presence, you know, and being there matters. Every worker that left, every woman who turned around and chose life says, if you weren't there, I wouldn't have left. And so it's not a profound statement. It's just that being there. And of course, we pray in our homes. We pray in our churches. We go to daily mass. We go to adoration. Those all have to come first. That is the point of this book. But we have time. And abortion is worthy of that little free time that we have to go out there. And your presence matters. And the abortion workers, when Abby Johnson left, she said the no-show rate went up 75% when people are out there.
Right. And that's the point you make here. Day 9, you aborted Beethoven, and you talk about how that gets used sometimes, a line thrown out in a pro-life talk, actually.
And it's a good story.
But you say these stories are sensational, albeit interesting, but don't care for them much yourself.
Right.
I always feel bad for the struggling woman in the crowd who chose life but whose kid is a loser. Or the woman whose kid is seriously disabled and can barely communicate, much less write a book, compose music, become president, or land on the moon.
Yeah, and the point of that is you don't have an abortion because there's too much pressure on your kid. Or if you choose life and you're lucky to be here, little Johnny, you better cure cancer. That's not what we believe. God makes us all with intrinsic value. And so we all get a chance. And I love the Beethoven stories, and there's a million stories. And we don't know who we've aborted, and they are sensational. Could have cured cancer. He could have been a drug dealer. I don't know. But it doesn't mean that he deserved abortion.
Right.
And this is real. We meet these women where they're at. And it is tough situations. And they don't even know who Beethoven is. And so the last thing
I think they think it's a big dog who was in a
I think
movie.
so, with what's his face, the funny comedian. But yeah, it is.
Well, Charles Grodin was
Charles
Grodin,
that's
right,
it.
Yeah,
right. But he's not a big dog, and they need that hope that they can be a mother, that there is a love for them out there that they don't realize. And of course, when we trust that, when we side with life, which all other political issues do, by the way, when we actually side with life, that naturally happens. And I've met high school baseball players that were saved from abortion. I've met kids who are getting their first communion, who are on the honor roll, who are doing wonderful things. And I've met kids who can't talk because they're so severely handicapped. I met the little girl that Milagros, who has no legs, and kids with cerebral palsy, and all of this. Particularly the kids that have a target on their back. We don't need those stories, and I highlight that I'm not knocking
Kind
on
of plays into the kind of utilitarianism.
It's
of
got a
our
little
society.
utilitarian, and it's fun. And
Right.
I know I have friends that use those stories, and you know they're going to be mad at me. But I'm making a broader point
sure.
that all life is sacred, and your kids, and those who, if your sister is thinking of having an abortion, if your neighbor, those kids, they don't have to cure cancer or play, you know, for the New York Yankees. For some reason, you root for them. They can do. Just their life has value, and you're called to love them.
Well, I like the Yankees because they don't have as many trash cans in the dugout. But I was reminded, you say, of the small but profound point that in so many ways we must be patient when it comes to abortion.
Yeah, that's the hardest thing with anything. But we're, you know, this next year, or, you know, we're inching towards 50 years of legalized abortion. And it's overwhelming. I mean, 63, 64 million babies that are dead. And we have to be faithful and work and sweat and pray and then be patient. And you look at some of the great injustices, not just in America, but around the world, in the scheme of history. Abortion is unique in that it demands our urgency today because babies are dying. And yet, it's been going on for decades. And not that we sit back and, well, maybe one day it'll end. I think there are definitely too many people doing that. But it's not up to us. It is not up to us. We have to be patient, or we really are going to burn out. We're not going to be a help to anybody.
Right. You talk about in this Just Say No. If you're reading this book, you're struggling, and struggling is a gift. I'm not speaking from an ivory tower here, you say, but as a recovering overcommitter. And I thought this was good because I remember this even when I was involved in marriage encounters. Sometimes we'd say, sometimes the right answer is no.
Yeah, it's,
You know what I
no is
mean?
such a great word. Pretty universal too. You don't have to be bilingual. Yeah, that is my public hypocrisy, putting that in that book, because I've had to learn over the years too to say no, and everything I said no to was good. You know, I mean, it's not the obvious no's.
Right.
You know, do you want to go golf all day with people who you're not related to and abandon your family? Those are sort of easy, even though I would love to do that. But these are good things. These are things that will enhance our apostolate. These are things that will help somebody else's apostolate. But you have to say no. And we know so many families, but also old Catholics, young people, and they all complain about being overcommitted. And priests struggle with this too, and are a great help to lay people.
Well, our
they
Lord used to
understand it.
take some time away. He used to go and pray. There were times that I had to, he wasn't healing people 24/7.
He left.
Right.
He just left. If you do that now, you're just rude. If you were to leave an event early.
So you're running away. Let me ask you, just before we wanted to talk about the video Life Journey with Sean Carney, which is a DVD that's available and that people would have seen when you were on with Father Mitch. That's not based on this book. It's a little different. Talk about the DVD.
It's a little different. You know, we mentioned we're coming up on 50 years of legalized abortion, and what does that look like? You know, it's easy to debate it politically. It's easy to look at the science. But as far as experience, we talked to 3 different people who encountered abortion, including a former abortion doctor, a corporate woman climbing the corporate ladder who had 4 abortions along the way, and a mom from Mexico who came here to marry her husband, and her baby was diagnosed with everything you could possibly imagine, and her doctor scheduled an abortion for her. So we talked to her, and it's just it's very, very powerful. It's kind of a travel log, and I was very grateful for the crew, very gifted crew, and I was grateful for EWTN, who was the first to reach out and say, we want to air this. So I think people will enjoy it, and they can get it from EWTN.
Right, and I think maybe you're planning on doing some more
Yes.
like these, right, in the future?
We've been very busy pitching it to a lot of different secular networks are interested in it. They're more tolerant now of abortion because they need content because of the streaming. So it's a great thing about media is that there are more opportunities now, and no one took a bigger opportunity than that, was way ahead of their game than Mother Angelica.
Absolutely.
So she's the pioneer.
The Catholic niche program par excellence, Mother Angelica. So that's Life Journey with Sean Carney, of course, that DVD, and also the book to the heart of the matter, a 40-day companion to live a culture of life. Also great for Lent as well, and it's available through our EWTN religious catalog. Always great to see you, Sean.
Thank you. Good seeing you.
It's good to see you. Keep up the fabulous, fabulous work with the whole 40 Days for Life. And thank you so much for joining us here on Bookmark. We'll see you next time. Thanks.